It's almost like ecstasy in a way when you're like, I just battled through with all my might, the willpower that I have, the drive that I have, that this will not deter me to the point where I'm going to fail and I'm going to power through this. And when you do, no matter what, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to see what happens on the other side, and you just got to continue pushing forward.
Welcome to the Success Flow Podcast, where our mission is simple: to be better each day and relay our findings with other relentless humans defining success for themselves. If that sounds like you, let's begin.
All right, back at it on the Success Flow Podcast, and this one's a long time coming. Today's episode is going to be a book review from our perspectives, and this book, the author's been mentioned a number of times on the show. He has been incredibly impactful for me. I've invested heavily in his training from the organization, this peak performance training company that he's built, along with being a best-selling author called the Flow Research Collective. But the title and what we're going to approach this episode from today is a review and perspective from the book, The Art of the Impossible, which is a peak performance primer. I always forget that subtitle. Love everything about this book. I actually had to put the cover back on because I hate covers. I think I have trauma from grade school. Did you have to put those grocery bag, like paper bags around your books in grade school?
No, that must be a Midwest thing.
Probably a Midwest, very small Catholic school thing. Anyway, I always pull the covers off and recycle them. Anyway, put it back on just for that, and we're going to jump in. So when we talk about the art of the impossible, the frame for this conversation is probably going to come from myself, and I'm trying to apply it to enterprise SaaS sales. It has extreme personal benefits for anything you're trying to achieve, but which we're going to cover. And I think Steven's going to approach it from an entrepreneur's perspective, and it's not limited to that. This is how we read it, but anything in your life right now that seems impossible, your hairy, audacious goals, something that's out in the distance, could be your massive transformative purpose, or it's blurry right now. These are some techniques and practices that you can put into place right away and start getting some momentum for those projects. So with that, I am so pumped when you said you were going to pick it up and read it. And I'm going to have you actually kick us off to see what your first takeaway you'd like to talk about is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the recommendation for the book. We talked about it a lot over the summer, and I know you were a big, advocate for this stuff. And it's really kind of what got you into flow and flow state and that whole mentality. And I think your exact words were, "This book is my Bible." and so if anything is your Bible, I'm going to read it because I want to know, especially where you're coming from. And, I try to build a lot of the things that I'm creating and doing from a foundation of what it is that you're doing. There's a lot of overlap there. So I picked it up, and I thought I was going to knock it out in like 3 weeks. So disclaimer, it did take me a long time, only because there's so much great content that I kept going back and rereading. Yeah, it is very dense, and I took tons of notes. But it's an easy read. And I thought what was cool is how he broke it down. Impossible, and like you have the little I impossible and you have the capital I impossible. And when you think of impossible, it's like that means it's not possible by definition. But he breaks it down and says the little I are the personal feats that are thought to be out of reach, and the big I are world feats that are thought to be out of reach, like stuff that's never ever been done is the big I. So to give an example of a big I, I didn't realize this. Steven Kotler started in extreme sports journalism. Right. And so he kind of gets into that in the beginning part of the book. And he was running around with a bunch of extreme surfers, guys that were doing some big stuff on the big waves. And up until 1996, the largest wave ever surfed was like 25 feet. And he goes, that was impossible, big I, to do anything above 25 feet. That's a world feat that's thought to be out of reach. And as he was covering a lot of these extreme surfers, in the 90s and then the early 2000s, obviously those records were broken. Like it seemed like daily once that 25 foot, it's almost like the marathon thing too, where running a marathon under 2 hours or whatever it was unheard of. And then it happens once and now everyone starts doing it. I can't remember exactly what that mentality is called. If you know the term, shout it out. But I just thought that was cool how it's like he breaks it down where once one major feat is done, then, it's no longer impossible and you have the ability to do it. So I thought that was really cool. And he just, that's really how he starts it out. And he talks about the biological formula of impossible. And at the crux of it all is flow. And he talks about the quartet of cognitive ability to reach the impossible, and it's motivation, it's learning, it's creativity, and flow. And so if you start with motivation, it gets you in the game. And then when you're motivated, you start learning, and that's how you keep playing, right? And then creativity is how you steer and navigate through those waters and take on the 50, 60, 80 foot waves. And then flow is what turbo boosts those results. And he talks about that a lot. And I just thought that was really, really neat, especially coming from an entrepreneur's mindset, coming from a guy who's trying to figure it all out in my personal life and how that aligns in my professional life to become that business athlete that we're all striving to be.
Dude, I don't know if you could see this, but I kind of got a little bit of goosebumps. That was an awesome freaking kickoff and synopsis from that perspective, because if you are interested in this material, the first book that really put Steven on the map in this study with extreme action athletes and flow is The Rise of Superman. And that book is what really changed my life before this one came out. And that concept where I wanted to start with or move into, which you perfectly teed up, were those intrinsic motivators. These guys that are surfing those big waves, or your Tony Hawks that are flipping in the air 900 degrees, all of these peak performance athletes or these extreme athletes, they are not motivated by money. It's not retirement. And this also talks about the dangers of flow, especially in that environment. But you can get so caught up in this state when you're being effective and hitting on the things that you're intrinsically motivated by, that time can pass and your own safety can come out of it. But back to knowledge work, we have to get to our intrinsic motivators. That's our engine. It's our wind in our sails, and peak performers are driven by a deep internal desire to achieve. And that's where we talk about the massive transformative purpose, which I know you have built into the Oppo Flow playbook and practice. Yep. And it starts there, the North Star, right? And so what are the things that you're passionate about and drive you to be your best? That's your intrinsic motivators that you need to kind of start with.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things he talks about in the book is the recipe for drive. And I really took something from that. And it's basically being able to stack, cultivate, and align things in the following order. And it starts with curiosity. And a part of the Oppo Flow mindset is preparation. And that's where I think the curiosity comes from, is preparing, being a knowledge seeker, always trying to find and learn something new, figuring out what it is that you're capable of and challenging yourself on purpose. And then he talks about passion. So the second, recipe of drive is passion. And it's figuring out what it is that you love to do. What are the absolute favorite things in your world? What are the things that you want to develop and create? And then it's purpose, and how do you make an impact on others through that passion? So for me as an entrepreneur, I really came into entrepreneurship world through the payroll industry with launching Journey Payroll in Phoenix, which is a franchise location that Journey originally started in Fort Collins. It wasn't started from scratch for me, but I came into a partnership with that group and launched the first location and got the taste of entrepreneurship through that model. And we run and operate at such a high level now out of our Phoenix location and all across Journey, but I focus on our location here and had that entrepreneur's mindset. That's what gave me the drive to become an advocate for entrepreneurship. It didn't end up had to be payroll. It just ended up being payroll. Like, no one goes to school for it, right? And so when I was curious to figure out what is out there is when I got into the payroll world, because I knew I wanted to get in sales. That was the first job that I got. And then when I built the passion around sales and wanting to help others and build a community, I was at ADP, right? And doing a lot of those things. And then it became purpose of how can I make an impact on others in the community in my local market? And that's when we were able to launch Journey Payroll in Phoenix. And now 6.5 years in, being an advocate for entrepreneurship, how can I educate and teach others on figuring out how to delve into that curiosity and focus on that passion to make an impact on others through purpose? And then we can help on the back end, on the back office, but I'm more focused on getting the mindset right, scaling your business, and you can do it through a state of flow. And I just really took that. It really resonated with me as I was reading that back.
Bang on again. And this is one of the key concepts that I've been working on for my whole life, but intentionally the last 6 years. And one of the key portions of the book is embracing fear and uncertainty. These are huge flow triggers. Novelty and the emotional drive that fear brings in can be transmuted. And quite honestly, at the end of the day, this isn't necessarily specifically said in the book, but fear isn't real. Whatever you are fearing in the future, you cannot tell me that it's happened in the present moment. You can't. Something that happened to you in the past that you're fearful of, that is also not happening right now in the present. The present is the only place where this flow state exists. So from a sales perspective, I used to be paralyzed when I was 27, 28 to get on the phone with a CAO or CFO and have a business conversation. I had no equal business stature. That was some of the initial coaching I got to say, hey, this is human to human. You know this platform, you know their problems. Get on the phone and own that equal business stature. So that's just one little example. The fears that you have right now tells you exactly where you need to go. And that is where the deepest state of flow goes because you are so concentrated. Once you've transmuted that fear into energy, focus on the task at hand, that flow is going to find you as long as you can maintain your focus, which I know is more easier said than done, but a huge part of the book that I took away and impacted me immensely.
Yeah, that hit home. I remember just getting into sales as well. And it was like, how do I have a conversation with these CEOs? And then when it clicked for me was realizing, well, they're just people too. Like they have a business and I'm a sales rep, but if I let that mindset get in the way of my mission of trying to help them when I know my product is going to serve a purpose and streamline their back office, and I'm afraid to have a conversation because they're a CEO. No, like once you realize that they're people too, and that once that clicks, then you can be wildly successful in the sales world, which I do believe when you're wildly successful in the sales world, that also trains you and helps you develop to be wildly successful in the entrepreneurial world. But a lot of what you talk about is mastery, right? Being a master of your craft. And Steven Kotler talks a lot about mastery in the book. And it's just continually improving the skills that are needed to pursue that purpose once you defined it, massive transformative purpose, whatever that looks like for you. So tell us a little bit about some of the mastery habits and things that you're doing to continue that pursuit.
Absolutely. So mastery is awesome. And you've got Malcolm Gladwell and Robert Greene that I think are two of the biggest influences and are referenced in the book, I believe. I could be misstating there. But there's this concept around, 10,000 hours that you needed to master anything, whether it be an instrument, a skill, whatever it may be, a sport, that was the number. And research, you can jump into the statistics and depending on the study could go either way, but it's really about those 10,000 hours. How intentional are they? And how often are you iterating on each hour of practice? So I think what you really noted there and within the question is there has to be a little bit of obsession here. There has to be something that you can't get off your mind. And when you're ruminating in your spare time, you're not thinking about the bills that are due. You're not thinking about how you have a dental appointment next week. You want to have that time to ruminate on that purpose and process that you're working on right now. And if you can do that, if you can have the cognitive space to use that rumination time on the true problems you want to solve, that's where the magic happens. Now your brain's working for you in the background, and your whole day is a problem-solving event. Again, I know this can sound a little bit pie in the sky, but the stuff works. And as you start piecing it in, you'll see the benefits incrementally. And like the bamboo shoot, overnight, exponential growth, and you're up to the moon on the way to impossible.
Yeah, it's there's actually a line. I wrote it down when I read it back. I think I sent you the text too. It says, the act of stalking the impossible actually helps us stalk the impossible. It's totally cyclical. It's cyclical. That's just like the act of being obsessed of whatever your impossible looks like to continue that progress towards achieving that is what helps you keep going. That's that motivation factor, those intrinsic factors, the ability to, within yourself, nothing externally is going to motivate you. It's within yourself. That's what you're so focused on. But a lot of it, he gets into the science of it and the, brain and some of the natural drugs that we develop is like dopamine, right? And pre-performance. He talks a lot about dopamine is the powerful focusing drug. That's what gives us the reward of just being on a high, a natural high, as we continue in our state of flow. And we realize this when we accomplish the little wins along the way, and you see that progress. So I think one of the coolest things was he just says, play in the intersections of curiosities and devote 20 to 30 minutes listening to a podcast or reading a book or just simply having conversations with people, and allow the ability to listen intently and take the knowledge that you're picking up and devote the time back in when you have that quiet time by yourself, when you're putting in that work, to be happy with your wins and your little successes and write them down, right? And keep a chart. Like I've got a chart over here. I've got a summit to summit challenge for Junto that we're doing. And mine's a number of workouts within the 12-month period. And I've got a chart. Every time I hit a run or a workout, I put the date up there and I'm starting to see that thing fill up. If that doesn't keep you motivated, like I'm like, damn, I got to get back out there, right? Because I want to see it fill up faster. And so those little things are super helpful.
Dude, hitting on the topic of dopamine and working with this work, this is where we have to talk about cheap dopamine versus good dopamine. So this is one of the most fundamental problems, in my opinion, in modern society. I don't think there's would be a lot of disagreement with that. But when we're taking our breaks from work, the flow cycle has a huge portion of recovery that's required. It is so energy draining on your brain to get into flow. That's why you get so much done. That's why you're problem solving effortlessly. Because of that, you have to take breaks. That dopamine is depleted. We tend to take our breaks by looking at this amazing thing in our pocket that has every answer known to man in it. Or we're looking at it to watch cats dancing. But that's not a break for our brain. That's keeping the dopamine high and is almost sugar for your brain. And so on these breaks, when you're in between these sprints on a mission, this is where we want to walk. This is where we want to stretch. This is where we want to nap. My favorite's meditation. But find these real micro breaks to follow your micro bursts. This keeps the cycle flowing. It's an engine. And that's where I think, and I know that this is where our work, you and I, has a huge Venn diagram, is the fundamental platform underneath all of this being your physical state and what are the basic requirements. They're the 7 fundamentals of flow and being that business or executive athlete.
Yeah, and when you're busy, right? Everyone's busy, especially if you're in the kind of...
God, I hate that word.
I know. Everyone says they're busy, right? And especially when you're in the white collar type industry where you're behind a desk a little bit more often, and you got your phone or you got your computer or whatever. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's been 6 hours. You haven't even gotten up from your desk. And you're like, dude, no wonder I have no energy. No wonder I'm feeling burnt out after months of this or weeks.
And that wasn't the flow keeping you in that session.
No. And I've been through that. And as we were building the business, and this is where OppoFlow kind of came from, was I was spending 10 hours constantly just working, just nonstop, no breaks, no nothing, because there was so much going on. So I thought I just wasn't working efficiently. I was always thinking I was working so hard when during that time, those 10 hours or whatever, I'm spent there would be moments of just, I don't even know what I'm looking at right now. And I'm just staring at my laptop and I'm lost. I'm like, wait, what was I just doing? Oh yeah, I'm going to go over here. And then a squirrel. I'm like, I'm going to go over here, or, find another shiny object. So I recently built this into the OppoFlow mindset of recognizing what it is that you're trying to accomplish and take those breaks and be obsessed with your routines to be at optimal performance. And so now every hour I give myself 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be a long time. And it doesn't even need to be 5 minutes. It could even be on a call, just standing up and walking away if you need to be. But if you can find 5 minutes every hour to recharge those batteries, I guarantee you the next hour, the next hour will fly by.
Amen, my man. I did want to dive in a little deeper to the business athlete stuff, even though we covered on this podcast a lot. None of this is going to work if you're not fueled properly. If you have dormant energy sitting around, stagnant in your body, Your brain's just not built for it. We're movers. This hunt that we do in knowledge work is now sedentary. We should be standing on this podcast, especially, but so we got to practice what we preach. But those 7 pillars of clean fuel, sleep, movement, getting out in nature, meditation, relationships, and I'm missing number 7. So sorry, my flow folks, that I can't get 7. It'll probably come to me as I continue. These pillars, if you can knock out 4 or 5 out of the 7, we're not looking for perfect. I couldn't even remember the 7th right now. If you have those on lock, flow is at your fingertips, as long as you have focus, which I'm sure you have some pretty good notes on yourself, as I know that's been a big part of Oppo Flow.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, in my opinion, you can't get focused if you don't know where it is that you're going. And so it all starts with purpose. It starts with where it is that you're going. And once you define that purpose, it becomes a rallying cry for inspiring others to join you or the task at hand, whatever it is that you're trying to work on. And, Peter Diamandis is involved in this as well. Him and Kotler, I think, they wrote the Superman book together, right?
Abundance. They wrote Abundance together, and it's a killer book. And if you thought Impossible was dense, that one is dense, but a gem. I still haven't finished it, but continue.
That's right. Yeah. So I know they're tied. I haven't read that one yet either, but I know he talks about Peter in the book as well. And he really gets into the massive transformative purpose and what does that look like? And it goes, the massive part is kind of like the capital I. What's the worldly impact that I can make on millions of people? And then you back into those high, what does he call them? High growth goals or something, high end goals, something like that. And you focus on the little I of what is the personal feats that I think are out of reach. And when you have that purpose defined, then that's when that focus comes in. That's the preparation and that's the work that you're putting in to recognize certain opportunities that align with your values and your purpose. And then you can make the jump and more confidently make the jump to those ones that align. And then that just totally transforms your entire world and the way you think when those more doors are being recognized, more doors are being opened for yourself. And so anyway, you're hunting for the overlap of passion and purpose. That's what I think it is. You're figuring out what it is you love to do, and you're figuring out what the point of it is all and how you can make an impact on others. And he talks a lot about that in the book, and it's driven from the state of flow.
And I think that we, up to this point, 22 minutes in, we've talked a lot about the benefits, what the ideal future state is if we can get into these states and that. But when the going gets tough, and you did hint on this, on the days where everything's hitting the fan and there are fires all around, this is where he talks in the book about 2 things. I'm just going to combine them for the sake of this conversation, is grit and the power of ferocity. The habit of ferocity. And so these 2 things, when we talk about flow, that's the ideal state, but the first phase of the flow cycle is struggle. And this is where 80% of people just quit. This is why you jump to email. This is why you jump from project to ping to I'm going to get coffee. I'm going to text my spouse. Back to my project. Where did I leave off? Grit, which is Angela Duckworth, I believe, is the true expert on this, or at least the most recognized. Grit's the ability to keep going. This is my own definition, regardless of the discomfort felt. So we got to get a little tough, a tough guy or gal mindset going here. But the ability to continue when those things are coming down all around you, prioritization and knocking them out domino by domino by domino, micro sprinting through them, that grit and the habit of ferocity to stay locked in task by task singly to knock them out. That's how you maintain the flow state and keep the needle moving. If not, you're going to be running in place like a hamster on a wheel.
Yeah, we've all heard of the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And I think the grit is when you have that growth mindset, it's the grit to power through and continue focusing on our attitude towards learning and be like, man, there's so much coming at me right now. And it's hard. It's hard to get out of that state of like, sometimes it's just taking a break and taking a nap or going to bed early that night and just saying, you know what, I'll get to it tomorrow. And once you get that rest, and that refresh and that reset, you can come back to and be like, okay, what happened yesterday? Let me take stock of what actually happened and why I was in this position of just swirling and kind of out of control a little bit with my mind and kind of that chaos. And it's, how can I learn from this? How can I pivot? How can I be a duck, let it roll off my back if it was out of my control, and unearth this invisible skill that I have to deconstruct those problems and move forward in a positive way to the outcomes that I'm trying to achieve. And at the end of the day, recognizing what you've done along the way as well, not just focus on the outcome. So yeah, he talks a lot about the grit, and I love that word. It's not used often enough, but it's such a great word, man. Like, grit, like you can just feel it in your teeth when you say it, like grit. Like you just want to chew. You want to chew on it, man. But you're almost, it's almost like ecstasy in a way when you're like, I just battled through with all my might, the willpower that I have, the drive that I have, that this will not deter me to the point where I'm going to fail, and I'm going to power through this. And when you do, no matter what, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to see what happens on the other side, and you just got to continue pushing forward.
Amen. And I think one of a great place to go in the book from here is when those situations hit, you have to have the tools for grit, right? Grit isn't something that it just says do grit. And one of the best places to talk when you're hitting these moments is to yourself. And so you're having a conversation in your brain all day. And this is where I get obsessed with the subconscious and conscious mind. And the amount you can communicate with yourself and change that self-talk about those fires that are blowing up in your face, about everything hitting the fan, you can navigate yourself through those conversations to stay on task. This takes practice. But as you do it, again, taking that break, stepping away, what is priority right now? What did I set out with the intention to do today? What is the number one factor in my business right now to keep us on track or get us back on track? That self-talk that can happen in whatever way you want. Journaling is a fantastic way, not the fastest. I just love to have that conversation in my head. Go have a meeting with yourself. Control those thoughts, because if not, you're going to be built for survival, not thriving.
Yeah, he talks about the amygdala being your threat detector. Remember that part?
Lizard brain.
Where he's part of your brain says, that's what drives, and it's looking at, fight or flight. It's looking at what's coming at me. What can I do to get through this? And a daily gratitude practice is a great way to control that negative bias that potentially could be in there. And so it changes the amygdala filter, if you will, and essentially trains it to take in positive information. And so I thought that was really neat how he called it the threat detector. And it just, it appears in optimism and confidence and, produced by practicing a daily gratitude journal. And I do it. I don't do it in the morning. I do it at night. That's my reflection piece of the daily power. But I define what my purpose is for the day. I try and set the tone for the day in the morning, and then recognize, various things throughout the day. And then at night, I'll do the reflection, rate the day, and write down my thoughts and gratitude. And that's what's worked for me. But it's daily. It doesn't say daily AM, daily lunch, daily evening. It's just daily. Whenever it works for you. I think jotting down some of those gratitude, what you're grateful for, and how you accomplished what you did throughout the day is important.
Amen. That amygdala, known as the lizard brain, that's our primal survival, right? Like, I love the quote, we have primal brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And that is a dangerous, dangerous combination. If we don't know that we're still working with, our brains haven't caught up to what our brains have produced. And so that amygdala is going to be the key to what you step into and through, or run away from, or worse, paralyze. Freeze is the worst state to be in. Either run, adjust course, or power through it, but don't freeze. And these are the practices that can kind of help you get there. What were your takeaways in regard to not necessarily the extreme, how he ties together the extreme sports and then transitions over to business, some of the titans that have, really built large things and are achieving the impossible as we speak, Diamandis being one of them. But how he tied those together, what were some of your takeaways as someone who's building and scaling a business?
I think it's just not shying away from the word mindfulness. I think people think that mindfulness is can potentially be woo-woo or religious or spiritual or whatever. And at the end of the day, the definition is just act of paying attention to your mind. Like listen to what it is that you're thinking, break it down, take the moments, go on a walk, get outside, and figure out what it is that you're thinking and why. Ask yourself the question why. So I think just paying attention to the mindfulness piece. Again, in your personal life is where you start. And then that transforms into the business world, focusing on yourself and making yourself the best version that you possibly can be at home. That will translate later into the business side. I think you can, I know you don't like the word fake it till you make it on the business side, but you can put up a front when you're working with partners, clients, whatever. They don't know all the ins and outs of what's going on in your life personally. And so I think it all starts mindfulness on the personal level to become as authentic as you possibly can be on the professional level. And that's really where I took that, going from one side to the other.
So good. Art of the Impossible, folks. One more time on the screen. I wish this was in every hotel room right next to the King James Bible. I'm sure Steven Kotler does too. But he's also going to be really stoked that we wore black T-shirts today if this comes across his consciousness. That was not planned for Steven Kotler. Or also shout out to Rian Doris, who's his business partner and has really built out the Flow Research Collective. Any closing thoughts, Steven, as we wrap this one up?
Yeah, no, that was a great book review. I like to call these mindset rec rundowns, meaning it's a mindset book that we're recommending people get into and spend the time getting into it. I'm not going to lie. It's not like a quick, easy read. It's very interesting. It gets very intricate, but it is a very powerful read, and just take lots of notes and enjoy it, and kind of get yourself wrapped around the idea of mindfulness. And I think you'll really enjoy it. You know what? We can't wrap just yet. What do you got? What's your impossible? And if I put you on the spot, I'll go first. Jeez. Personal, like lowercase I impossible? Personal feats or we're going big I if you got one. Going back? All right. Big I. All right. So big I, my massive transformative purpose as it stands right now that I've defined is inspiring millions with a mindset shift towards their own success. And I'm an advocate for entrepreneurship. So if I can do that through small businesses, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or executive leaders who are striving for growth, that's my massive transformative purpose. So my big I impossible would be speaking in front of thousands of people, sharing the Oppo Flow mindset and what it takes to bootstrap businesses from an entrepreneurship level, and doing it while I'm still very young, healthy, and active, and within the next handful of years. How about you? All right, you're up. Mine is it's an audacious one, and it's to end unnecessary suffering with the use of the subconscious mind, and to most immediately help sales professionals find this, to improve the business and world as a whole. But it's not limited there, right? Every single person has access to these states, and I want to make sure I've shared it with as many people as possible and never stop learning about it. I hope Steven writes 20 more books. But though, if he stopped right now, there's plenty to read and reread. So that's my big I. And yeah, audience, find your impossible and share with us what it is, and start putting some of this in place, even if you don't read the book, and just get after it. Like, subscribe. We'll be back at you next week.